Welcome to this week's Therapeutic Tuesday. And for this week's mini session, I'm working with Dani. And she starts off with really this focus around wanting to work on self-love and needing to get the approval or kind of love of others. And where we then go is the realization that what's happening is she's kind of leaving herself, activating her nervous system to kind of become the person that she believes that everyone else needs her to be. And this can be particularly a challenge on the recovery journey when we're coming into stage 2 to stage 3, where we're coming back into the world, but we're kind of leaving ourselves to do that. Often on the healing journey, we've learned to be in a calm healing state when we're at our baseline in isolation. But learning to stay in contact with that when we're around others is a fresh challenge. So that's what we're exploring. And there's also a little exercise I do with Dani at the end, a little body scan meditation, which you're also welcome to, obviously, to experiment with. Please don't do that whilst driving a car or operating anything kind of dangerous in terms of machinery. Just obviously be sensible. But here is the session with Dani. I can see you now. There we go.
Great. Hi.
Nice to see you.
Good to see you too. I'm so nervous. It's weird.
That's okay, that's okay to be nervous.
I keep telling myself that.
Say that again?
I keep telling myself that too. Doesn't really change anything, but yeah.
Yeah. So you sent, I think, a few different questions into Jenny. We've got kind of up to half an hour or so. I'm happy to use the time as feels helpful for you. Did you have something? Did you get a bit clearer specifically on what it was that you'd like to talk about?
Yeah, well, I was trying to. I just needed to zoom in on something because otherwise it'll be too scattered, I think. So I think the best one would be the whole inner conflict thing. You know, like the last email that I sent about the happiness conundrum, which ties into inner conflicts and guilt and all that stuff.
Yeah. Give me a bit more context. I think the phrase that stuck out in my mind was that to do with that you need to do things that bring you joy to be happy, but then you need to be happy to be able to do that. I think was how I read that. But give me, maybe that wasn't quite right. Give me some.
Yeah, no, it was like I have these conflicting beliefs that I need to be a happy person so that others will love to be around me.
Thank you. That was right. Yeah.
And at the same time, I have this this weird guilt about, or feeling that it's wrong to prioritize things that make me happy especially if they conflict with what other people might want or what I think other people want. And so that's one of the big inner conflicts. That's a huge energy leak. Just
sure. Yeah. So you need to be happy for people to love you and to like you. And then the part 2 was that. So repeat the part 2.
That it's wrong for me to prioritize things that make me happy, and I feel like I always have this guilt when I do it, and then there's this guilt about doing that, and then there's also this part of me that doesn't really know what I want, or I'm always like, it's so hard to make decisions. Which I think ties in with guilt about, even wanting things for myself and not prioritizing others. I've used to always say in the past, like, I know what I want. It just changes every 5 minutes.
Well, you want lots of different things. I understand.
Yeah. And then I can't, like I always second guess my decisions. And on the rare occasion when I do know what I want, things are so easy. I just go after it, and it just when that inner conflict isn't there, it's just life seems easy. But this is very rare.
Yeah, sure. I mean, this sounds like one of those patterns that gets heavily fueled when the nervous system is overstimulated and wired. So it's almost like the more we get in our head, and the more we're trying to figure out the answer, like, what is it I want, but do I deserve that? And is that really the thing that I want? And what are people like? There's a lot of frenetic kind of energy that's behind that. And I'm guessing when your system calms down and switches off, and the times when you're in a more grounded, embodied kind of healing state, that this pattern probably doesn't play out in the same way. Like, I imagine it probably all appears simpler in a sense. There's more of a connection to what it is that you want. There's less of a caring about what others think about it. Is that right? Like the intensity of the pattern, it correlates with how speedy your system is.
Yes, absolutely. And so when I'm in my healing bubble alone, things always seem clear. Well, not all things and not always.
Sure, but on average, it seems simpler and easier.
Yes, totally. And I get it all, the whole self-love concept, and I've been working on it for 2.5 years. And, like I can feel like it's developing, but it's as soon as I get out of this bubble and I'm interacting with people, and especially when it's something that feels somewhat important, or I have this fear of being judged, or of losing a connection with other people, my energy is always with the other people or person. So as soon as there, like one person, it's easier, but as soon as there's more people than one, it gets even more scattered. And then like this connection with my self-loving self seems so fragile that it just gets disturbed really, really quickly. And it's the thing is, like I've started to do the stop process more rigorously, and in my healing bubble, I'm really quite successful with it, which is pleasing. But again, as soon as I'm out and about, it's like that it's too far gone. Stopping the train is too much momentum.
Yeah. It's a very typical challenge on the recovery path, which is that we work very hard to get into a healing state kind of when we're at our baseline, isolated from the rest of the world. But it's how do you maintain contact with that healing state, surrounded by all the noise and provocations and irritations of the kind of world around you, in a sense.
Yes.
Because it sounds like to me, when you're in that healing bubble, as you say, it's not that every problem in your life disappears, but it's like issues like this tend to feel easier, and they're also easier to work with because there's less pollution of the issue with all of this other layers of kind of complexity and stuff that's going on. And that's not to say there isn't value in doing work on the issue. I think there is value in doing work on the issue, but I think it's going to be tricky to do that when you're getting overstimulated into a state of kind of maladaptive stress response and being wired when you're around other people. And so almost a first step in some ways is how do we support you in maintaining more contact with yourself when you're around others. So my kind of feeling around this is I think what happens is when you're around other people, you almost leave yourself. So you kind of get caught into either the field, if you're around a bunch of people, like the kind of the vibe of the room and how other people are feeling. And it's like part of that is you need to be a certain way for people to love you and accept you. You need to be kind of happy and kind of, dynamic or interesting or whatever the narrative is. And if you're, and if you're not those things, then you're not loved and you're not safe and you're not accepted. And so you're going to get more into the kind of stress response in a sense.
Yeah, you nailed it.
Okay. So this is one of those ones where there's a bunch of pieces to the jigsaw, and we've obviously got limited time in terms of which pieces we work on, but I can give you some signposts towards some pieces, but also some practical things to kind of start with. So I think part of this issue, and this is, I'm imagining some of the other kind of practitioners listening or watching this session, and they're thinking, why is Alex going in that direction? So I'm going to answer that question for them, which is probably not relevant for you right now, which is that I don't think it's that useful to work on the self-esteem piece of this, the kind of self-worth, self-love piece, whilst you're leaving contact with yourself. So in a sense, if we can get you more rooted and more grounded in yourself around other people, then you're more in touch with what's yours versus what's them. And then that issue becomes much easier to work on. So that's why I'm going where I'm going with it. So there's a few pieces. I think that the piece that is probably most helpful is, do you have, when you're, well, actually, firstly, what's the rhythm of your life like at the moment? Like, how much are you by yourself? How much are you around others? What are some of the locations or instances where, you're around people and you're kind of leaving yourself?
Right. So right now I'm living with my parents again. I was supposed to start a new job about a month ago, and I think I got so wound up by the stress of not being able to live up to my own expectations and the expectations I expected others would have, that I got in a really bad way, and I was so exhausted that I couldn't. Like, I had to cancel the job and move back in with my parents. And so now I've decided to take because I haven't actually done that in this way. I've decided to take the rest of the year off as much as I can and just put myself in rehab mode and to just work on that. So I'm not interacting with people terribly much, except my parents, which comes with its own set of challenges. And when I do go out, it's, either doctors or I meet a friend or whatever. But even then, there's situations where I stress about, just worrying that I disappoint even doctors or, friends when they want to meet up, 3 of them. And I'm like, I don't think I'm up for, seeing 3 at the same time, stuff like that.
Okay.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does. Thank you. So I think a really helpful exercise is training your attention to stay more with your body and you when you're around others. So what can often happen when we're around people is either we speed up in ourselves, so we go kind of more into our kind of mind and our kind of thinking and our kind of more kind of egoic self, or we almost leave ourselves to feel all the feelings of the other people and kind of become who we need to be loved and accepted in life, which I think is part of the strategy that you kind of started off by describing. Like, I need to become this person to be loved. But the only way you know the person you need to become is by being kind of hyper attuned to what everyone else is kind of what you think they're thinking and feeling. Yeah. So it's partly a trained, like, it's how your attention has got trained to go when you're around people. And I'm massively oversimplifying, but it's almost as much as just literally, where is your attention? Like, is your attention on the other person, or is the attention on yourself? Is your attention on your thoughts and what you're thinking, or on your breath and your breathing? Is your attention in your kind of body, or is your attention in your head? And the more we kind of do anything, the more of a habit it becomes. And for different reasons, when we're children, we develop certain strategies of how we learn to be safe and how we learn to operate in the world. And sometimes the narrative of these kind of strategies is that we learned to get love and get safety by being hypersensitized to the environment around us. And so we get really skillful at feeling into and tuning into and being aware of everything else that's going on, which is a great skill and a great quality to have. But if it's constantly used as kind of a default strategy in a way which is ungrounded and undeliberate in a sense, that we end up being completely drained by being around people, because our whole system's kind of revved up to be hyper attuned to what's happening. And also we're kind of feeling everyone else's feelings and emotions, which is also kind of draining and exhausting. So learning to train our attention to stay rooted and grounded in our body. There are lots of ingredients that we can use for that, but part of it is almost like as you would do meditation practice in your bubble. You were saying that in your bubble you're being quite successful at getting into a calm, healing state. That it's having a few practices that we'll talk about in a minute, that when you're around people, that you're really working on staying in your own body, staying in touch with yourself and your own felt sense, being in your own arms and legs, rather than getting sucked into everything else that's happening.
Yeah, I'd love to hear more about those tools, because I feel like I've started to do this when I first noticed it 2.5 years ago, and I failed miserably at it. And then I just became more aware of, my energy is with those people. And, like I'm feeling in my body, and it's like the stress chemicals are raging. And so I kind of don't even want to be in my body because it's so stressful.
Right. Yeah. Disconnect feeds disconnect, right? So the more we disconnect, the worse the body feels, the more we want to disconnect from our body.
Yeah.
But also connection feeds connection. That's why when you're in your bubble and everything kind of calms down, it actually probably feels quite good to be in your body. So you're kind of happy to be there. So you want to do more practices to help you get more in contact.
Yeah, I do. I do know. Mm-hmm, yeah.
What were you going to say?
Well, there's the other thing, and I think that's where the guilt is playing tricks on me again. Like as soon as I start feeling better and more energized, there's this. Then I feel this urge to use this energy for good again, and like I almost start feeling guilty again for just doing, sitting in my healing bubble and not contributing to the world.
Yeah. So that there's a core belief, which is that your value and your worth is defined by what you do and what you contribute to other people.
Mm-hmm.
Are you familiar with the Enneagram?
Yeah, I've done it.
Yeah. Where do you place yourself on that map?
I'm a strong enthusiast and a helper.
Yeah.
And then followed by achiever and peacemaker, I think.
Yeah. So what you're describing is a very two-ish or helper pattern, which is that I need to give and help others to be of value and be of worth. Also, losing yourself in others, the unboundaried self is a very two-ish pattern in a sense as well. That's not that I'm necessarily categorizing you as Ennea type 2. We've only been talking 15 minutes, I'm less into using the Enneagram to put people in boxes and more to go, these are 9 things that everyone does in different ways. And whether you're a type 2 or you're a 7 or you're a 23, that's not really the point. The point is that this quality is something that's happening in you, and it's certain impacts and certain consequences to it. I think also there's a sense that the more you're in touch with your body and the more you're with yourself, the more that you're able to deal with the core of the issue here. And I think the core of the issue here is in the ballpark of something on the lines of not being lovable or not being enough as you are. And that kind of goes back to that initial statement that I have to be happy for people to love me. And so there's a kind of underlying piece here, which is that I'm not enough as I am, so I've got to turn it into something else to then be seen and noticed and loved by others. The more you're in your body and the more you're in your heart and in your emotions, the closer you are to working with that kind of core issue or that core wound that's there, which I think is important to give its own therapeutic attention and its own kind of work to. But anyway, at least alongside, if not before doing that work, things need to keep slowing down and getting grounded. Otherwise, what happens is you can do that work, but you're just in a habit of leaving yourself and going into other people anyway. So I alluded to some practices. This is going to be disappointingly simple, I'm afraid, but it's, in a sense, taking the principles of what you're doing it sounds like you're doing meditation practice already by yourself, It's taking principles of that and using that when you're around other people. And so the most helpful focus of that meditation practice around other people is your arms and your legs. And there's a bunch of reasons why that's the case. One of which is there are exceptions to this, but there tends not to be a lot of emotional content stored in the arms and legs. We tend to store emotional content in the heart and in the belly and in the kind of midsection. So if we are feeling kind of, anxiety or, in the head, or we're feeling we're not enough in the heart, by focusing to the arms and the legs, we're not engaging so much of that content. So it's kind of more grounding. They tend to be the kind of anchor point, particularly the feet and the legs, to the ground. So it's quite a rooting thing to just kind of feel our kind of feet on the floor. But what we want to do is we want to really just train your attention that when you're around people, everything's speeding up and you're kind of leaving yourself and you're caught up, and training your attention to stay rooted. So your feet are on the ground. You kind of, you can feel your kind of shoulders, you can feel your arms, you can feel your kind of buttocks on the chair. And there's just a sense of rootedness and groundedness. And then that instinct and that kind of pull to speed up and leave yourself are still going to be there. And a little bit like in meditation practice, the goal of meditation practice is not to stop thoughts. Stopping thoughts doesn't work. The goal of meditation practice is to pay less attention to certain thoughts and direct your attention in more helpful ways. The same is true here. The goal is not to stop yourself from getting caught up in things or pulled away. That's going to happen. But the goal is, as much as you can, to keep catching what's happening and bring your attention back to feeling your feet, to feeling your hands, to feeling your shoulders, and actively practicing slowing your nervous system down.
Right. Okay. Sounds good.
It is a good thing to do before you go and spend time around people. It's a good thing to do to add to your meditation practice. So when you're doing your meditation, you add kind of 5-10 minutes of sensing of your arms and legs. And I'm going to run you through an example of this in a minute, so you've got a kind of experience of that. So you might do it on a daily basis with your practice. And then if you're going to be around people, before you go, you kind of set the intention, I want to stay with myself. I don't want to leave myself and get pulled into this. So you do some practice. And then when you're there, you're constantly just feeling your feet, you're feeling your hands, you're feeling your shoulders, and you're retraining your system. Your system is trained to a habit, and you may have to do it 100 different times around people to start to get some muscle memory, to start to get some kind of habit. That it's a little bit like, when we're a kid and we learn to catch, and it's such a tricky thing. And then you're an adult, someone throws your ball and you just catch it. It's just as a muscle memory. It just happens. It's the same thing here.
Okay, cool. I'm going to look like an autistic person, but I'll give it a shot. It's interesting that you say that, because I've usually focused on my heart and my belly area, because that's where the rattlesnakes are. And I've always tried to, focus on that to calm it down. But to focus somewhere else is actually something I haven't tried. So
yeah, it's an interesting one. Generally speaking, I'm obviously a big fan of people connecting to and feeling their feelings and emotions. But the observation is that at times where we're not really equipped to deal with what we're feeling because there's other things that are drawing our attention, actually it tends to just put us in a frustration loop where we feel things and they bubble up. And then we try not to feel them, they bubble up more, and we just kind of get. So actually it's more skillful to just put your attention somewhere else that allows you to be embodied, but doesn't mean that you have to deal with all the kind of reactivity that may be happening.
Right. Okay. Cool.
It is one of those ones where it is so simple that people just assume, well, that can't possibly have an impact because I need to deal with my kind of core wound about not being enough. And I need to deal with my belief systems around, I believe this has to happen for that to happen. And I need to, and all that stuff I think is valuable. And I would encourage kind of work around that. But in terms of the thing that in the time we've got, which is in my mind is like, if you could be more anchored and more rooted in yourself, this pattern that might play at a 10 out of 10 sometimes, if you're much more in your body, is only going to play at a 4 out of 10 or at a 5 out of 10, for example, which makes it much more manageable and makes the consequence much less. And then when you're doing actual therapeutic work to process it, becomes much easier because it's less of a kind of all over the place, kind of overstimulated, wired thing that's happening.
Yeah. I'm curious to see how it goes. I'll definitely give it a shot.
Yeah. It's also one of those ones where knowing we could be doing it or knowing we should be doing it or thinking about it or promising ourselves we're going to do it next time and telling, all of that just doesn't change anything. It only changes in the actual practice of doing it. So I think what would be good to do is I'm going to just guide you through a quick experience of this. And I'd be interested if you just notice now how you feel, and hopefully as we've been chatting over the last kind of 20, 25 minutes that, I know you said you're feeling a bit nervous at the start. Probably you feel, hopefully, might be feeling the opposite, but hopefully a little bit more comfortable. But just kind of notice where you are, like on a 0 to 10, 10 being like totally system-wide and stimulated, 0 being completely calm and grounded. Think about, you have to tell me now, but think about a number that would be where you are right now.
Right.
Okay. So you can do this with your eyes open or closed. There are pros and cons both ways. It's probably easier practicing it with your eyes closed because it's less distracting with kind of seeing me and, seeing the screen and everything else. But obviously when you're around people, you're going to do this with your eyes open. In terms of your comment around coming across like you're slightly autistic to people, here's the thing. Here's the thing that's interesting. We are able to, people that suffer from panic attacks can have a full-blown panic attack around other people and not even realize it's happening. Other people not realize that it's happening because they just hide the experience. Someone can be feeling, suicidally depressed and no one know about it. That's why it's so shocking sometimes when, certain situations, when something happens. It's possible on the opposite. It's possible to be feeling deep senses of joy and pleasure and connection and people not know. And it's possible to notice your arms and legs and ground your body and people not notice. So there's this kind of this idea we have that we think, oh my God, well, if I slow my nervous system down and I really connect to my arms and legs and that becomes my attention, people are going to have this massive, like, oh my God, what is Dani doing? That is so weird. But in reality, people often, they might notice you seem a bit more calm, but they're not. It's where your attention goes. People have very little awareness of that.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. Just like there are times that you're having all kinds of thoughts about other people and they have no idea what you're thinking.
It's funny because I have such a high awareness of what's going on in other people. I always assume that they do too, but they rarely do.
Yeah. And also with respect to what you think is going on with other people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
And you may be right sometimes, but other times it may well just be a projection of the whole story and narrative that you're running.
Yes.
Normally our story about what other people are thinking, and this is not a comment aimed at you, it's a comment aimed at the human population, is a deeply narcissistic and egocentric thought. Like, our thought is not, I wonder if they're thinking about what they're going to have for tea later, or I wonder if they're thinking about, that thing they said in that conversation earlier. It nearly always revolves around us, which is the kind of, as a side comment, the irony of low self-esteem. People that have low self-esteem think that everyone's thinking about them, which is just a kind of like, when you really look at it, it's just kind of like a very bizarre setup that we get, that we think we're unimportant. We think everyone's thinking about the fact we're unimportant. Anyway, I digress. So if you want to close your eyes for a minute, I want you to start off with the sensation of your left foot and just literally feel the feeling of your toes on the ground. Maybe wriggle your toes. And just notice the contact point with the ground. Notice the feeling of each toe. So track your attention from your big toe, second toe, third toe, fourth toe, fifth toe. Notice the sole of your foot. And as you notice this, you can also take a few deeper breaths. You can notice the muscles relaxing. You can notice your mind being a little bit quieter and slower. And then sense from the bottom of your foot up to your ankle. And then sense from your ankle up to your knee. And just have a sense of being aware of the sensations, the feelings the bottom part of your left foot up to your left knee. And then as you sense from your left knee up to your left buttocks, and just feel your shoulders dropping a bit more, muscles in your face relaxing a bit more. And is your mind having a bit more quiet, more space between thoughts. And then have a feeling of your right buttocks, feeling more the weight of your body relaxing into the chair. It's almost like as you feel more rooted to the chair takes more of your body's weight. Your body feels heavier. It feels heavier because it's more supported now. And then moving from your right buttock through your right thigh down to your right knee. And just have a sense of the feeling of the sensations, any temperature, quality of any clothes on your skin or the air or whatever you notice, from your knee down to your right ankle. And just feel your right ankle on the floor, feel the feeling of your toes, bottom of your foot, top of your foot. And then just feeling the sensation of both of your legs, feeling your body's weight, feeling quality of how the inside and the outside of your legs feels. And then as you relax now, be aware of your left hand, feeling of your thumb, your fingers, palm of your hand, back of your hand, your wrist. And as you feel that, feeling the sensation of your left hand up to your left elbow, just feeling how your left elbow feels now. And then from your left elbow to your left shoulder, maybe wiggling your fingers a little bit as you feel your hand and the sensation all the way up to your left shoulder. And then to your right shoulder. If there's any tension in your shoulders, you can just let the muscles soften a bit more. And then from your right shoulder down to your right elbow, the feeling of the quality of the skin, your arm, of any sensations, elbow down to your wrist, the palm of your right hand, back of your hand, your fingers, and just feeling the full sensation of your arms, both of your arms and both of your legs, and your feet on the ground, feeling of your hands. And just hold your attention for a while, not in a rigid way, but in a curious way of how your legs feel, how your arms feel. Your body feeling heavier, more rooted, more grounded. And just feeling a sense of the sensation of being rooted in this moment in yourself. And then in a minute, I'm going to ask you to open your eyes. When I do that, I want you to see if you can hold more of your attention with your arms and with your legs. So in a minute, when you open your eyes and you see, and there's light and there's images, as much as you may want to leave your body to meet those, let them come to you as you feel your arms and your legs. And then open your eyes in your own time when you're ready. Okay, what are you aware of? How does that feel?
I'm trying to stay aware of my arms and my legs.
But don't over try it. It's like inevitably there's kind of trained response of what happens. But what was your experience whilst you were doing that?
I started to notice the tension, as you mentioned, maybe you can relax your face muscles. I was like, oh, damn, they're tense. And it did feel I enjoyed the journey. And then eventually I got to the point of thinking, it's nice to do it with someone being there with me. I wonder how I'll be doing when I'm doing it by myself, because I'll just get bored out of my mind probably. And I'll have to work hard to stick with it.
Yeah, it's a practice and it's a discipline.
Yeah.
You had a number before. What number would you give now? 10 being system, being completely wired, 0 being completely grounded. What number would you pick now?
Right now, I would say, I'm a 2 or a 3. This is good.
Okay. And where were you before?
In the middle, when you first asked me about a number, I was already lowered down to a 5 or a 6.
Yeah. So if you can go from a 5 or a 6 to a 2 on a regular basis when you're coming into contact with other people, can you see how that starts to change how you feel when you're around people.
Totally. Yeah.
Because I didn't go anywhere. I was still here. And if anything, it's almost more weird because you got your eyes closed and I'm talking at you in a strange way. So if you are practicing this when you're around people, you're training your system, I think what you'll find is you'll feel less of, I need to be a certain way to be loved, because actually you're just, well, I'm kind of in touch with my arms and legs right now. I'm in my body and that's happening there and this is happening here. And there may still be some of that tendency and pattern, but it's got less of a grip upon you. I think there's also less of kind of, well, I can't prioritize me because I should be doing that. And all of that head stuff also slows down a bit. I still think that there's work to do around the underlying kind of core belief and kind of emotional kind of history around this. But I see this as a prelude and preparation and support of that, not instead of or replacement of that.
Okay, great. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Any questions that you've got?
Millions.
Any questions that you've got that feel particularly important for right now?
No, I think that's a good point to close.
Okay, good. I am gonna, on the condition that you don't watch back this session and start using it as a way to analyze yourself and beat yourself up, I'm going to send you.
How did you know?
just a guess. I'm going to send you the recording of the session when we finish, or later on today when I finish filming something else. And then you can use that 5 minutes at the end and you can replay it as a support. And also for people that are watching this when it goes out, they can also use it in that way as well. So you can have that as a little kind of recorded thing that you can use to help as well. In fact, what I'm going to do, because I think you are going to start watching this back and I don't want you to watch it back straight away. What I'm going to do is I'm going to chop the audio and I'm going to send you just the audio of that section.
Okay, sounds great.
All right. And let me know how you get on. Drop me an update in a few weeks' time and let me know how you're doing with practicing this. But practice it proactively. So when you're doing your meditation practice it when you are about to go and be around people, and practice it in real time.
All right. We'll do, I promise.
Good.
Thank you so much.
Okay, take care. Bye.
Bye. Take care.
Hope you enjoyed that mini session. And if you had a chance to experiment with the exercise, I hope you found that useful as well. Tomorrow is Wellness Wednesday, and a bit like with Mindful Mondays, I'm going to evolve the format of Wellness Wednesday. So I'm going to talk about that a bit more in tomorrow's vlog, and I'm also going to be talking about why solving the puzzle of recovery is important. And it's going to be a kind of bit of a prelude to where we're going to go in some of the future Wellness Wednesday sessions. So I look forward to talking with you tomorrow.